Welcome back to an exciting. Actually, I say welcome back, and it always feels a little weird. I try to be like really smooth and have this thing like I'm like, oh yes, welcome back to to our show. We're on again, but I feel like that should be like a commercial break intro. Like
They've never left, Zane. They never actually
I
left.
know that's kind of how I feel about it. Is that they've never left, but welcome to another episode of the MMA Prospectus with me, Zane Simon, my co-hosts Tom Grant. I'm excited about this show because we've been in like this slow month-long, if not longer, stretch where there just aren't that many MMA events going on around the world each week. Sort of like half the normal number that we've been used to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's meant that for a few shows now, we haven't had a lot of guys to talk about. Like we've had the UFC fighters, and then that's about it. Maybe if there's a Bellator event or something like that, or World Series of Fighting, we can really get into that and talk about them. But otherwise, we've got the UFC, and that's it. So this week, I'm actually excited. We've kind of got a bunch of guys to talk about, even though there's not a lot of MMA going on. There's a few really top shelf young talents in the UFC fighting this week. Yair Rodriguez, Teruto Ishihara. I'm excited about Joe Gigliotti, and the Danielle Taylor and maybe Chase Sherman too. A couple other newcomers that are of interest, and we've got a bunch of guys on the regional scene to talk about too. But before we do that, and before we jump straight into that, I want to roll back really quickly to last week, and I didn't set this up, so I know I'm just dumping this on you.
Yeah.
But really quickly roll back to last week and talk briefly about Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Rose Namajunas. And I don't know if it was something I said with you or one of the other shows I did last week. The vivisection, I think we talked about it, is that this really felt like will we see Rose Namajunas get over her problem with volume strikers fight? If that is the problem volume strikers, or is it other top shelf athletes? And I guess I don't know if we've really answered that question because it ended up being clinch work, and I'm also not sure if Karolina Kowalkiewicz is as underwhelming athletically as I thought she was.
Yeah, I think Carolina's clinch is, as she's gone along in her career, has become increasingly more of an offensive weapon. And in this fight, even more so, it was an extremely offensive weapon. And I think it was for Rose a little bit of an athleticism issue. Like she went up against another really good athlete, and she was expecting to kind of walk over Karolina in the clinch, it kind of seemed like. And then every time they engaged in the clinch, Karolina was coming away the winner and just sucking the life out of Rose with those knee strikes, and really just piled it up. And Rose ended up kind of Hail Marying like a guard pull in the third round, which honestly she probably should have done partway through the second round or at the beginning of the third round if she was going to go with that strategy.
It's a little weird. The faster, more powerful, better puncher early in the fight. Like she was just landing at will at range, hitting Karolina Kowalkiewicz a lot cleaner and with more precision. But the moment she decided she needed to get into the clinch and try and work that game instead, it just ruined her. So I mean, it's maybe not, maybe we don't see that. We can see now that maybe it's just not that volume striking is the problem, as we saw with Tecia Torres, but it's just good, diverse fighters that can be in front of her and who can meet her on a variety of levels, because Namajunas isn't maybe necessarily confident enough in any one area of her game to just stick with that and do it for 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's we both kind of pegged Karolina's a really good up and coming fighter who has a game that is geared towards winning rounds. Yep. And we kind of saw her game kind of come out perfectly, and Rose's game very much fell apart. And I agree, early in the fight, she looked fantastic at range. Carolina kind of moves on straight lines a lot. And early on, Rose was like cutting nice angles and catching her when Carolina was trying to come forward with like nice counter hooks. And then it all disappeared when Rose, I think Rose maybe got it into her head after she started losing a few clinch exchanges. Like, no, I'm the better clinch fighter. I need to win this now in the clinch, kind of like to prove a point. And it continued to be a problem for her as the fight went on.
Yeah, and it's one of the things you think back to a lot of Rose Namajunas' performances, and a lot of the times it's been sort of like, oh, I can land the big shots outside, and then I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to get into the clinch, and I'm going to just like completely wreck your world there, being this whirlwind. And she's really been able to rely on that and not have to just, okay, I need to actually just stay away and strike and really make this difficult on you from range. And this is where we see that get taken away. It's just like, you know, and once that got taken away, where you're left with a fighter who she can still pop from range and she can still do well there, but she just didn't seem willing to depend on it as her only way to go through each round.
Yeah.
And by the time she was maybe willing to do that later in the fight, she was also just exhausted from the clinch. So it was a big, interesting step for Namajunas, something that, I don't know, it really turned, it turned my head at least, because I expected if she lost to Kowalkiewicz, I didn't think it would look like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we also had the Invicta fight. Alexa Grasso looked really solid in the main event.
I think also from that UFC card, it's worth mentioning that Nikita Krylov looked the best he's ever looked, and actually like looked like a top 15 light heavyweight, like from start to finish of a fight.
He's, you know, I think I said it at the time, right afterward, but he's kind of finding value in the same things, in the same area, weirdly, that Derek Lewis really seems to have found value in, which is not necessarily becoming a world's more technical fighter, but just bringing a little bit of patience to your game, like just a little, and that making a huge difference. Like Krylov just being like, you know, I can just actually sit outside and just keep throwing a few combinations. I don't have to just rush in and try to swarm somebody with everything I know how to do all at once. And doing that to Ed Herman, like with an opponent like Ed Herman, who's willing to brawl and who's not fast enough to catch up with you, like it just was a night and day difference for him.
Yeah.
It took what could have been a close, dangerous brawl and just turned it into like a clinical
one-way ass kicking.
Yeah, a one-way ass kicking. So that was really great to see.
And then also Joe Rogan was like unusually good on this card. He summed up the Freddie Serrano fight, I think, really well when like about partway through the fight when Serrano was just throwing weird shit against the wall, striking wise, and just like not showing a great fight IQ. And Joe Rogan is like, well, we're seeing a guy in his 4th MMA fight, and that's basically what you're looking at right now. And that like really nicely summed it up, that like Serrano's a fantastic wrestler and a fantastic athlete, but we saw in the Ryan Benoit fight, dude's still figuring out how to fight like a full MMA fight and still has a ways to go, but holy crap, can he lift people up and put them down? Yeah,
that fight was weird. That was just a very, very... It was a guy who doesn't know how to kickbox and doesn't know how to grapple in Serrano versus a guy who doesn't know how to wrestle and doesn't know how to grapple in Benoit. And so you had basically like the purest kickboxer against the purest wrestler. And it was just this constant stream of takedowns with no ground control, stand up with no takedown defense.
It is, and it speaks to the thing that you kind of pointed this out, and I've followed on this, and I agree with you that being a pure wrestler is now like probably the hardest thing to do in MMA because everyone kind of has a plan for that now.
Yeah.
Like it's such a foundational skill now in MMA that everyone who's any good has a plan how to deal with someone who wants to take them down.
There are very few wrestlers good enough with their top control that they can just wrestle somebody on top of them and stay there and have their opponent, and like without working for submissions or working for ground and pound. If you don't have an active top game and you just have to control top game, most fighters these days can sniff that out, and they can stand up or they can work for submissions, and you give people enough time, like just that kind of repetition, and fighters are pretty prepared for that now.
Mm-hmm.
Also worth knowing, I didn't actually get the chance to see this, so maybe you can fill me in if you did. If you didn't, then we'll just mention it briefly. The other two big prospects of the weekend, Hakeem Dawodu and Phil Hawes. Dawodu had a big win over Marat Magomedov, making up for a draw and passing a huge test in front of him. And Phil Hawes, he had his first loss, fell to the seasoned vet with a long submission history.
I saw both these fights. The Dawodu fight was excellent. Marat Magomedov also looked really good in this fight. In the first round, it was all Magomedov. Dawodu got taken down pretty early. He got his back taken. He was in a really deep armbar, which in the post-fight interview, in tears, Dawodu said that the arm popped several times in the armbar, but he'd rather break his arm than lose a fight. And then in the second round, Marat got stuck out at range, and Dawodu just picked him apart and just brutalized him with a liver shot for the finish.
Oh.
Yeah, as you said, huge pass of a test for Dawodu. He's ready for bigger things.
Yeah, I hope the UFC can get him quickly, because like the ability to beat a fighter like Magomedov and finish him, to me, it's just like this dude's proved that he's ready to start taking big steps forward. Get him somewhere where he can take those steps, because it's not World Series of Fighting.
Yeah. Phil Hawes, he had flashes of brilliance in this fight. Like his strike to takedown transitions are still there. He had one that was like absolutely jaw-dropping, but he looked kind of stiff on the feet. He headhunted the whole fight. He had, and it was something that I noticed, and then Boss Rutan was pointing it at, how Taylor was just leaning back to avoid certain punches and was leaving his body wide open, and Hawes just was just throwing head punches, head kicks, just completely ignoring the body. Hawes really didn't seem to like striking in the pocket, but he was still doing pretty well in the fight, like was winning the fight, and then he got clipped in a pocket exchange and shot like a panic takedown that was, again, seemed to be going pretty well, and then Taylor latched onto a guillotine, choked him out. It's one of those losses for Hawes, fighting an experienced guy, a big experienced guy with good submissions. And it showed some holes in Hawes' game, but I think some of his strengths still shone through, and it's more about him just trying to find a way to get back to his strengths.
Yeah, I kind of thought that that would be the outcome of this fight. Like, I really want to be excited about Phil Hawes, and we were on our last show talking like I'm very excited about this fighter, but it's also like he's fighting a dude that's got 9 years of experience, has been, is 13-3, is a very good winning fighter in that experience, and has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, has won every one of his last 5 fights and 6 overall via guillotine. And It's just like, that's a setup for a wrestler like Hawes to take a loss. It's just the perfect setup for how young guys lose fights. Somebody in Hawes who's been fighting since 2014. Like, we are literally, 2 years into this dude's career. And he's only this was his 5th pro fight, and he's fighting a really solid, good veteran with a very strong guillotine game. It's just like,
that's what happens. Oh, damn it.
Yeah, that's what happens. Let's head week, because we got a lot to talk about here. And most notably, we got to talk because it really kind of feels like he's developing about as quickly and as well as you could hope for from a elite top prospect.
Yeah, he's coming along very nicely. We've talked about it before, but he's Just an absolutely phenomenal athlete, and just a really offensively gifted athlete. If anything on his game, I mean, like he's similar to Rose Namajunas in that like his game is all offense and then all like sometimes flashier offense, less efficient offense too, like energy wise. And that if he ran into a guy who could slow him down and force him to fight at actually a slower pace and a slightly more technical pace, that would probably lay some of the holes in his game a little bit more open. But Alex Caceres, not that guy.
No, Caceres is going to really try to match him pace for pace, funkiness for funkiness, and
it's going to be a great fight.
It'll be a great fight, and it should do exactly what Yair wants. But what I'm seeing more and more though is, because the worry for Yair was like fundamentals and process, and especially in like this Feely fight, yeah, he's still doing a lot of the flashy stuff. He's still got maybe a few too many big dynamic moves to smaller, more technical basics, but he's backfilling enough of those holes consistently that it really doesn't feel like that's the big challenge for him going forward.
Yeah.
Like he's showing a good, strong wrestling game and grappling game to go with his striking. And he's starting to show some of the more like, the ability to fill some space with some of the smaller parts of striking. And most importantly, he's showing the ability to stay defensively reasonably sound and stay out of range and know when he doesn't want to close in and when he wants to be outside, when he wants to be inside. And I don't know, it has the feeling of something that really, like, I'm much less worried about his ability to carry his style going forward than I was going into that Feely fight. And like in this fight against Caceres, it really just does kind of feel to me like he should have this. Like, I'm not worried about.
It's that there's not a phase of the game where he is like completely weaponless or and I think that is, for a fighter like Rodriguez, that is really important, that you're able to be threatening in every phase of the game. I'll be interested to see how he does moving forward. I really like Yair Rodriguez, and as I said though, I think when he has been fighting a lot of younger fighters, and now Alex Caceres, who isn't necessarily younger, Caceres
he's a solid vet at this point.
Yeah, he's a solid vet, but he's not like the kind of tactical, like really like student of the game sort of fighter that I expect to give Yair trouble down the road. But considering the fact that Yair is like training at the quintessential student of the game gym in Jackson Wink, I would imagine that they are working on like, rounding out his particular game in that sense. So it'll be interesting. I'm just looking forward. I want to see, like, for my biggest thing from Yair Rodriguez is just seeing how he looks from fight to fight, because he's changed in noticeable ways over the course of his 4 UFC fights, and he's been getting better each time. Yeah,
I'm just waiting for, how many fights is it going to be before he's a title challenger? That's just kind of where I am at this point, because I'm fully on board the hype train with him. The other guy, I'm hoping to be more on board the hype train for good reasons rather than the mediocre reasons I'm on the hype train right now, is Teruto Ishihara. And mostly I'm on Teruto Ishihara's hype train because he's got power and he has an awesome Twitter account. And those aren't the best reasons to be on anyone's hype train, but they've got him lined up for what should be a showcase fight here. And I'm really, I don't know. It's nice to have another Japanese fighter to get excited about, and one who tends to fight in something much closer to a sort of current metagame style.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest thing, is that Ishihara comes out and he fights like someone fighting international MMA as opposed to Japanese MMA, which again, I went back and watched some tape on a couple Japanese fighters in preparation for the show to see if they were worth talking about. It is still jarring. It's like even more jarring now to watch a Japanese MMA fight and just be like, this is like, I like it. I enjoy Japanese MMA, but you're just watching like, this is a different sport. They're like going about things in different ways, and they don't have to worry about certain things anymore. Like the removal of cage grappling is such a huge thing that changes how the fight progresses. Anyway, Ishihara's good, really good athlete. I should say he's not a really good athlete, but he has a excellent power. Considering, which is interesting, considering that he's not like this outstanding athlete. He's very aggressive, and he's good enough in the counter wrestling game and the getting up game that he can impose his game on people who want to take him down, which is what he did against Arce on the McGregor-Diaz card, where he put Arce down pretty definitively.
Yeah, I mean, I remember people were picking Arce going into that fight, and I think like Ishihara may have even been an underdog. I was like, Arce is not like very stretched out, really underwhelming athlete who got a very big, decent record regionally by fighting very bad competition. And Ishihara is at the very least, he may not be like top 5 level athlete, but he's like top 15. Like he's got the speed, power, dynamics to be at that sort of like borderline in between, where you're talking like the Diego Brandows and Maximo Blanco's a great athlete who's just nuts, but there's like this chunk right in the middle of the featherweight division, particularly where it's like Diego Brando, Sam Cecilia, Maximo Blanco, Honey Jason, Godofredo Pepe, and none of them can win quite enough to be an elite fighter, but they're all very fun, good, high-level athletes or decent-level athletes.
Yeah.
And Ishihara definitely at least has the ability to be a part of that in that sort of borderline top 15 area. So I'm happy that it seems like I'm happy he got such a big KO last time out, and I'm happy that the UFC didn't decide to throw him a much harder test this time out, because I do feel like they need to actually get something rolling with some Japanese talent at all. I realize it's not the market it was, it's not the fan base it was, but it's still something that they should be.
It's still a region of the world that puts on a lot of fights that is really underrepresented in UFC, and for reasons we just talked about. And Ishihara has, like, going down his record, has a draw where the reason cited is fighters fell from ring.
Yeah.
Like
it's a weird sport over there. But having, his only losses are to Ulka Sasaki and Michinori Tanaka, who have both been other highly touted Japanese prospects. And I'm with his power and his just sort of gung-ho, very fun, very aggressive style. I'm really looking forward to what he can do down the road. Also, otherwise on this card coming up here, I don't know if you got a chance to watch much tape on Joe Gigliotti, which it looks like Gigliotti, but that's how it's pronounced. It's apparently Gigliotti. But I really have a lot of interest in his game. Yeah,
Joe Gigliotti, he looks like he's an interesting fighter. Middleweight, right? Yeah, middleweight, coming out of Power MMA, and has a very Power MMA style.
He does. Well, I mean, he reminds me of Hector Lombard. That's like the instant comparison I draw.
I go more like Tim Boach with him. He's like more of like a slightly unrefined but still kind of refined powerhouse, like physical powerhouse fighter.
Yeah, he's definitely a better athlete than Tim Boach. So
but he's not. I don't consider him nearly the level of the athlete that Lombard is, or I don't see him as nearly as threatening in the clinch. Like Lombard's got a whole other skill set that.
Well, okay, but you got to understand that for a lot of Lombard's career, what we have really seen out of Hector Lombard, you go back to his like Bellator reign, is a guy who either hurts you, lets you circle around him and lose points. Like Lombard has this judo background, and we've seen it at times, like in his Jake Sheen and stuff like that. But Lombard's career has not been defined by his judo excellence.
I know, but it comes into play because basically, like even throughout his career, people actively avoid the clinch with him.
True.
Where I don't think that's going to be the case with Gigliotti. And so he's a very aggressive fighter, very aggressive in the clinch, and he has a nice power squeeze kind of submission game. Like any sort of submission where you got to like power squeeze something, arm triangles, guillotines, whatever, he likes them. And I think he is definitely a very interesting middleweight prospect in a division that is really, really hurting for young talent.
Yeah, I like it just because I like he's kind of got those short arms that while they're really short and he's undersized, he can throw them really fast and really hard. So it's like all of his punches that he throws are really quick, just like these lightning quick little short popping shots. Like I say, that's the main part that reminds me.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. That like the way he punches and the way his body throws punches is very Hector Lombard-like.
Yeah. And then, you combine that with a strong, decent, not maybe amazing, but a strong power wrestling game, and then a very aggressive grappling game. And it just feels like all the parts feel right for me to see him advance. The big thing he needs to work on is striking defense, especially entering the clinch, because he likes to dirty box, but he's been marked up a bit doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets hit, but he's tough. And like that's it's one of those things that like at middleweight, you don't need to be a super dynamic athlete. You need to be tough, and you need to have at least like a clinch skill set. And he has those two things.
So I'm really interested then to see him take on Trevor Smith, because Smith is one of those dudes that like, generally if you're a good, powerful, athletic fighter, you can beat Trevor Smith. John Vellante circa 2012, Kyle Magalhaes just in 2014. Even Ed Herman has a win over him. But he's also beat Brian Houston, who is a good athlete and super unrefined in sort of that Joe Gigliotti phase, and he's a very good seasoned vet who's been around a while.
He's an excellent gatekeeper for this sort of fight, and is going to tell us a lot about where Joe's at. Because the other thing I'll say about Joe is that his regional competition has been
Yeah, he hasn't fought the best competition. That's fine. Although I would say, actually, I don't know if you watched the fight he had with, oh God, what's his name? It's not anybody notable. I think it was, I want to say it was Nick Salantri, but maybe it was Brendan Tierney.
As I say, Nick Salantri is an 0-2 fighter who just picked up 2016, so I think it's Brendan.
No, it was Raylan Davis. That's who it was.
Oh, Raylan Davis.
Did you watch his Raylan Davis fight?
Yes.
Where, like, I believe, like, looking at that, it's like Davis is a super powerful athlete.
Yeah.
Who fights with the kind of ridiculous pace that, like, nobody who throws everything with that much power can fight that way for more than 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, some of his competition is underwhelming, but there's some dudes like that fight especially is like, that's, this dude you're fighting, nobody may know him. He may never amount to anything, but that is actually like a super tough fight for a young prospect.
In an interesting twist, it looks like he fought a teammate. In the Brendan fight, they both are listed as being out of Power MMA.
Interesting.
And they might have switched teams, or the guy may have come over to their team,
Who knows? But I'm interested to see Gigliotti, and I'm interested in this Smith fight because it's a huge step up, and it's a big, tough test for a young kid who's just getting started in this sport. So it's a weird fight for me for them to book straight out of the gate, but maybe he'll pass it, and if he does, I think it'll say a lot about his potential to be a real top prospect going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, on this card, Danielle Taylor, I don't know if you saw any tape on her. She looks like if she were an atom weight, she would be a hell of a good prospect. She's 5 foot nothing. She fought. I saw her. There's a fight she had. I can't remember who against, but against this woman who's 5'6", which is actually still kind of tall for straw weight, but not that tall. Like not unbelievably tall. And it just looked like circus Stefan Struve style difference kind of thing. And now she's fighting Marina Moroz for her debut, and Moroz is 5'7". Like Moroz is definitely one of the tallest women in that division. And you've got this woman who's 5 foot fighting a woman 7 inches taller than her. And that's going to be a weird fight. Taylor's all power, all big single shots. I don't think she's going to win that fight. It really makes me wish the UFC were starting an atomweight division for women like her and Michelle Watterson and Seohee Ham and some of these other really undersized but fun technical fighters they've got. And I'm interested to see how she'll do in the UFC though, because she's definitely she knocked out that 5'6" woman. She's got legit stopping power for a strawweight. So. Otherwise, there's a Chase Sherman Justin Ledet fight, which Sherman looks like he might be an interesting heavyweight former football player.
Kind of in he in some ways in the Matt Mitchell mold, where he's really picked up fluid punching.
Yeah, doesn't have those. He reminds me of, actually, now that I think about it, that's who Chase Sherman reminds me of a ton.
I just got Google.
I said Chase Sherman reminds me almost precisely of Brian Stan.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison.
Yeah. So we'll see if in the modern MMA game, and it's starting younger, Chase Sherman's much younger than Stan.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if that same kind of background and skill level takes him further. Like if that can be more molded. I believe he fights out of what's Alan Belcher MMA.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that takes him. If the modern camp structure and the modern MMA metagame takes that further for Sherman, but he reminds me a lot of Brian Stan right now.
Yeah. Also on this card, Marcin Tybura is fighting, who is trying very hard to be almost a pure wrestler ground fighter in heavyweight, which is a tough. I mean, when it works really well, because basically no one in heavyweight has a bottom game. It's just getting heavyweights down to the ground is really hard.
Yeah, it is. I'm interested to see what Tybura can do. This fight with Victor Pesta is actually going to be a really interesting one, because Pesta is very obviously a much better athlete, but they have almost the same game, where like Pesta also does not strike at all, except in the clinch. They're both okay clinch strikers, and then they're both guys who want to take their opponent down and work from top position. So,
if I'm remembering correctly, Tybura struggled with the cage in his fight.
He may have. Tybura's.
Oh boy,
his career. Like I really like him and his potential. You're cutting out a bunch.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on today. I got it cranked all the way down to super low bandwidth use, and I don't know. I blame you, Zane. All
right. Well, it could be my fault. Anyway, we're going to jump over to the regional scene. A few other fighters there. Wrap this thing up before Tom just falls apart completely. Couple of fighters on here I really like the look of. Most notable, probably, of new, like, so there's a couple of guys we've talked about before. Ricardo Ramos, real top prospect, who might be getting a look from looking for a fight this week.
Yep. Yeah, the promotion that he's fighting for is promoting their card. Let me really quickly reconfirm which one that is. Yeah, NEF is promoting it as they're looking for a fight card with Dana White in attendance, and Ricardo Ramos is in the main event of that card, fighting. Oh boy. Yeah, I got Alfred Khashakyan.
Oh yeah.
Who I looked at is a good fighter. It's going to be a good fight. I kind of expect the winner of this fight, as long as it's an exciting fight, to kind of be the one that Dana White ends up picking up.
Oh yeah, I mean Alfred Khashakyan, if that's how it's pronounced, whatever.
Khashakyan.
Yeah, looking at his tape, like he looks fast, he looks confident, he looks like an accurate striker, like one of those dudes who's very willing to step in and throw 3 or 4 punches because they know they hit with enough power and with enough accuracy to make them count. I would say he should be several steps behind Ramos in development. So if he beats Ramos, that's a huge win for him, and he absolutely deserves to get a fast track shot to the UFC and make something for himself. So you're chopping out, doesn't matter. You don't need to hear me. Anyway, I'm doing this for the people.
I don't listen to you anyway, Zane.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm also really excited and interested in Casey Kenney, honestly.
Yeah. So you checked out his fights. Wrestler who also did time on the U.S. national judo team, and his fights usually entail him kicking people really, really hard, and then at some point throwing them on their head.
Yeah.
Just seems to have a really good feel for MMA.
Yeah, he seems like he's really dynamic, really fast, great feel for the sport. My small worry is that he may end up going. Is he what weight division is he at actually?
I think he's like a bantamweight or a featherweight or a flyweight. Sorry.
If he's a flyweight, my worry might be that he might actually just be a little small for like he just in general, like he may not be flyweight. The most. Yeah, he's a flyweight. My worry might be that he might never be like a major powerful fighter there, so he'll really have to make that dynamism count, which we see out of a lot of guys, but a lot of the guys who really reach the top and succeed there outside of DJ, who's sort of this amazing marvel, are guys like Benavidez and Dodson and Horiguchi, who not only are dynamic and fast, but have real bulk and like stopping power.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see that with Casey. If he
is fighting on the Tachi Palace fight card.
Yeah.
Also,
against Hazy and UFC vet.
Yeah. Also, Martin Mann looked like a pretty solid young fighter fighting on there.
The other big guy, or the other big prospect I want to talk about is Leonardo Silva. I want to jump over to that because he's a rare light heavyweight prospect. Looks like he's a legit sized athlete at light heavyweight. I don't know how tall he is. Looks like he looks like he's over 6 foot.
Definitely. Yeah, he's 6'2", 24 years old, and already a really smooth athlete and striker for his size. There's not a lot of tape out there of him, but the one tape fight that I was able to find was him navigating a really small cage against given a pretty inert opponent, but just like really using his size well to keep this opponent at range and to navigate this tiny cage to stay off the wall or to stay off the fence and just beat the shit out of the guy.
Yeah, my own, like, the only slight worry I have is that he doesn't look like he's got a lot of combination striking going on yet. But he's got the power and he's got the fundamentals that I kind of expect that to build over time.
Yeah, my biggest concern is that he's a light heavyweight, which means it'll all come crashing down.
This is true. This is true. Otherwise, I'm also interested in. Actually, I was interested in Gregor Siwy. I don't know how you pronounce that last name, actually.
I knew you would like gravitate towards him, Zane. As soon as I was watching him, I'm like, Zane is gonna love this guy.
Well, I just love. I mean, he looks like a boxer who's going into MMA with a really good MMA boxing game, like slick, fast hands, good power, pop in his punches. I'm excited about that.
He's also a tough, kind of slow-footed Polish fighter, which also is like right up your alley.
I know, whatever. Don't pigeonhole me. Don't pigeonhole me.
Julio Arce is also getting into action this week.
Yeah, he's lost 2 in a row to a guy that I'm kind of shocked he lost to, though. So
yeah, well, hopefully he can get it back on track. Fighting in the CFFC this weekend. Who else?
I'll admit I'm much more excited about Viviane Pereira, who looks like a complete tank.
Yeah.
Like, she's not the cleanest, most technical fighter out there. She tends to have the problem that a lot of women MMA fighters do, is they learn striking of putting her chin way up and just throwing like this.
Yeah.
But she looks like a complete just powerhouse tank who, especially in the clinch, is just kind of brutal.
Yeah. She won like the XFCIs or the XFCs, like women's tournament. They did like kind of an ultimate fighter-y thing. Yeah, she's undersized for strawweight. But yeah, as you put it, is just a little tank and just runs people over with aggressive striking and grappling, and is really, really tough. Who else is going this weekend? Now Nascimento or not? Oh, I lost you.
Nascimento, I'm not really looking at tape on him. Maybe that's just me.
I was too. Like I know there's a little bit of hype about him. That there's stuff been written about him, and I watched him, and I'm just like, he is a very generic MMA fighter who like doesn't seem to have any standout.
He's got slick transitions on the ground. Like, I've seen him get taken down or almost getting submitted, and he does really well to scramble through it. But then when he actually ends up on he's the kind of fighter that can get taken down and have a submission tossed on him and need to scramble out of it. And standing, he's very hittable, very physically unimposing. I don't see a lot that's getting me really excited about that. I will say I did like Martin Day, the look of him, a Hawaiian kid. Looks like he's got a very strong fundamental game built around kickboxing and takedown defense. So,
yeah, no, I liked him too when I looked at him. That Tachi Palace fight card has some good fighters on it. Real quick, jumping back to the CFFC, Jonavin Webb.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, going to be fighting first fight since getting bounced from the UFC after losing to Nathan Coy. He's fighting Isaac Steele, who I didn't quite think was worth talking about. He's a 4-0 fighter out of Ohio, but he's fighting Jonavin Webb. Jonavin. And Isaac's like pretty much a pure grappler, but he's making it work so far. But is gonna have to step outside that if he wants to, like, I think, go somewhere. But he seems like a pretty good athlete.
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those interesting prospect fights. Like, Jonavin is kind of, at this point, a lot of people are going to be like, is he really a prospect? We've already seen him in the UFC. He got beat out. But this is a dude who started fighting in like 2012, got to the UFC really pretty quick, lost a couple fights. I'm still interested in seeing what he can do bouncing back, and it's good to see him getting matched up with another prospect. Like, face somebody else who's trying to carve a name out for themselves regionally. See what he can do. Maybe pick off another couple regional vets. I expect if he does well, he'll bounce back, because I liked his combination of wrestling and grappling game.
Yeah, I think we both agreed that he got signed to the UFC a little too soon for like his development.
Yeah, it happens. Any other news to talk about? Anybody else you want to jump in on?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to close out the show. You can find me on Twitter at TheseAnytime. You can find Tom on Twitter at TP_Grant. You can find both of us over at bloodyelbow.com. And give this video a like. That's a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com. That's DOTCOM spelled out. That way you can get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all that good stuff that we do on video. And stay tuned. We're going to have a Care Don't Care If I Did It vivisection for this UFC Salt Lake card. All that good stuff. We got the week off next week before we start gearing up towards UFC 202 Diaz McGregor 2. So obviously we'll be rolling out everything for that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.